Do you see that thing that says recording started? Yay! So, man, I wish my hair wasn't doing this butt cut thing today. And it is. Do you know what I mean by butt cut? It parts in the middle and looks like a butt. Dear viewers, we have already started. Let me explain to you this amazing term of butt cut that I had to explain in Korea when I was getting my hair cut. So when I was in Korea getting my hair cut, I was explaining in very broken Korean, ha ha ha, not a butt cut. And they were saying with their Korean accents, butt cut. What a butt cut. I don't know what a butt cut. And so then I had to, by then the joke is ruined, obviously, because I'm having to like Google translate and pull up images. See, looks like a butt. See, like a butt. And by then they're like, oh. And they were probably thinking like Americans and their crass humor, talking about their hair looking like butts. And then I was humiliated, and I'm glad I could share that with the world this morning. So as you can tell, we just chat. So I'm here with my friends, Lisa and Anne Marie. Does that sound right to you? Am I saying everything correctly?
Yep.
Yes. And they are fabulous parents. I've seen them in action to their daughter, Skylar. Skylar, and correct me if anything I say is inaccurate. Skylar is autistic and has Down syndrome. Is that correct?
That is.
I have had the pleasure of interacting with Skylar on several different occasions, whether it's been for a music and movement class or whether I've seen her out and about in the community. She has an amazing Instagram that, as I have told her parents, I look forward to every single morning because it is all the vibes that I aim for in my life. She is so completely 100% herself that she gives anybody within her physical presence permission to be the same, which I'm getting that feeling again. I gotta shake it out, which I just cling to, those kind of people. So if you don't mind sharing with us, we are a podcast that is mostly an audience of parents of autistic children, educators, and people who are interested in helping those with disabilities or even neurodiversities or those that are just different feel more included and supported. So if you could describe to us where your voice fits in with the audience that I've just described. That was a really complicated question. Wow. Good luck.
Clearly, she's looking at me to start with that. I can feel the glare.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a really good question. Write that down and remember it for later because I want to steal it.
Do it.
But I feel like our voice isn't really our voice. We assume that we are neurotypical. We assume we are. So our biggest goal is to give as much voice to Skylar in whatever way that shows up, whether it's in her just whatever behavior she's displaying, whatever verbal cues she's giving. She speaks in maybe 1 or 2 word sentences. It's to almost be her translator in a way, since we know a lot about her, and our voice doesn't mean as much as her voice coming out, since we're pretty much neurotypical, we assume. And I would say that to give her voice normalizes everything that she is, and it also continues to advocate for anyone else that might be like her, so that gives even more normalcy to everything, so that it's not a thing. And yeah, I think that is our role. And I think prior to having her, we may not have had the language for that at all.
Right?
But she definitely taught us that. Yeah.
I feel like there is so much that we learn. I mean, everyone learns from kids, period. But especially those that follow such a significantly different path. We all follow different paths, right?
Yeah.
But one that we haven't personally experienced or witnessed ourselves. And then when we see somebody in such an intimate way experiencing their own path. I loved how you were saying, it sounds like, and maybe this is an accurate or not accurate word, but facilitation. So like you're facilitating her voice. So rather than, I think you used the word translating, but like you're facilitating her being so in other words, not trying to apply any sort of extras on top of what she's saying, which is really beautiful. And I can say as a parent in a different, I'd say parallel but different, sort of situation, that's very difficult. And it sounds, I would say, very nice on the surface, and in its actuality, I struggle much less now, but much more initially with pressure from community, peers, family, friends, whatever, to explain away behavior in a way that frames it as not normal. Do you know what I mean? So I always felt the need to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's autistic. He struggles with da 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 da. And not necessarily to facilitate his voice for any reason, but just to make that person not judge me as a parent, and sometimes not judge him as an individual and human being. Was that a bit of a learning curve for you? Like, did you struggle with that at all? Or did you just like start out the gate being a rock star who was like, screw that, I don't care what other parents think?
We're still learning, number one.
Okay. But also it makes me feel a little better because that's a good one.
Also, it's a little different for us because finding out Skylar's Down syndrome diagnosis when I was still pregnant, we had like, that was oh, I can cuss on this podcast, right?
Sure.
An moment, like a seriously, oh, fuck, because we didn't know anybody with Down syndrome. We had no experience with any of that. So we had to start while I was still pregnant, decide, to keep her or not, which is, something that's a totally different experience than when your child is diagnosed at 3 and they're already here.
Sure.
We had to, so that was a growing experience for us at that point. And then, because we didn't obviously know she had autism until she was a little older, but coming right into the Down syndrome community, I have the experience more of, there was an expectation that because she has Down syndrome, she's supposed to act a particular way, or she's supposed to do all these things. And my feeling is always like, why does she have to do that? Why, just because she has Down syndrome, that doesn't mean she's, I don't know. I can't think of anything.
Think of all the stereoparts, basically.
Yeah, all the stereotypes. So there's a lot of that. And, we went to a lot of events with other children with Down syndrome. And I'm just looking around and I'm just thinking like, this is my experience, but it doesn't always have to look the way it's expected to look, the stereotypical way. And I kind of feel like that for autism too. Like everybody's so different. And that explaining thing, I mean, I think when we're in public, when she has meltdowns and things like that, I know you have experience with that stuff, but us learning how to just not like let the judgment infiltrate the experience we're trying to have as a family, or what we're trying to help Skylar get through, or whatever it is. Like that took a lot of learning. We did some behavioral therapy work, not ABA, but different behavioral therapy work, but that helped us. But also just, I think our family it doesn't do that to us. They expect her to be neurotypical too much. Like, so like say she's overwhelmed in a situation. Like we had to learn how to speak this to them, but say she's overwhelmed in a situation. Oh, it's okay, Skylar. We'll just sit with her and we'll touch her and we'll hold her and we'll talk to her and it's gonna be okay, Skylar. And we're just
it's okay.
Like we very much appreciate how loving you are to Skylar, and this isn't what is going to be helpful for her right now.
Right.
And like having to have that. So it's not that it's not that they were judgmental or anything. Like the family doesn't do that. They try to make everything like, everything's fine. We love Skylar. We're going to, I'm like, okay. And that's not exactly how Skylar needs to be seen and held space for. Like, that's not going to work for her brain. It just doesn't work for her. And so we have to educate in that way too. So the layers of the Down syndrome and the autism have just been like really, really interesting for us, like an interesting journey.
It gave us more permission through all of this. Like there's certain aspects, like Skylar wears her Down syndrome diagnosis on her face. So there are some societal expectations that she is going to not only look different, but act different than the dominant folks. But it gave us more permission to be like, oh, well, you know what? Just like Lisa was saying, it doesn't have to be that way. We can actually make the world a little bit easier for Skylar if we can show up the way that she needs us to show up. And that kind of starts infiltrating and dominoing down to the folks that are closer to her. They start watching that and we can model that. And then those little things start happening where it's not like because that's the goal, is to make the world just normal. Normalize all of it. That's for that. Yeah, just normalize everything. So it's not a thing. And it's starting to infiltrate little bits and pieces. So we're grateful for her for that. For sure.
Right. I feel like you have to, you start re-examining societal habits and expectations. And then for us, it became this like, well, why do we do that? Like my kid doesn't, understand or understand that societal expectation at all. And then as a parent, you have to weigh in your mind, like, is this something we're going to make an issue? Right. Like, this is something we're going to have to draw a hard line on. One of those for us is being nude in public. So we have had to draw, a hard line of, no, I understand that you got some water on the knee of your pants. We are in Walmart.
Yep.
We cannot remove your pants right now. We can think of alternative. We can go to the bathroom and wipe it and get as dry as possible. You can stay in the bathroom stall while I go dry it under the hand dryer. We can try that. So when I feel like when that's where you're at, and that's a very hard line for our family to draw and for my child to draw, that when it comes to like, yeah, you have to look people in the eye, or you have to, especially knowing the consequence of how that can physically hurt a lot of autistic kids and adults. But beyond that, you have to go see all 6 grandparents on Thanksgiving, or else you're a terrible grandchild. Why?
Yeah, we do a lot of that.
We do a lot of that.
Loud environment that it's not conducive to any kind of really wonderful one-on-one time. The whole point is to build a nice relationship. That's not going to happen at that time. That doesn't mean we don't care. And it really makes you reevaluate and prioritize and think about what is really important.
Well, just being a human, like to just be able to say, like, why does that matter?
Yeah.
Why does that matter? Like, we do that a lot. Like,
isn't that so weird? Like, why does that matter?
Yeah. And I don't think we ever would have learned that without Skylar, or had to think about it,
like really bring it into the consciousness.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course.
Again, with family, like family has expectations, like you're talking about, and even in smaller ways. And my mom too will say things, and I'll just say, "Does it really matter?" Like, and my mom's like, I'm like, well,
probably not.
It doesn't really matter. Like, think about that. So it's teaching her too, because she's from a whole different generation,
right?
But yeah, there's a lot of like, do we really need to do that? Does it really matter? Like, why do we even do that?
Why? And then I start personally, I have let go of so many of those kinds of expectations. And I have felt so free and willing to accept who I am and where I am, and not without the idea that I can't do better or that I can't push myself to achieve more things, but it's all within a complete acceptance of self at the same time. And like I said before we started, that like on my podcast, I don't wear makeup. And a lot of times in life, I don't wear makeup. And that's kind of all not a deliberate part of it. If part of that was to wear tons of makeup, then I'd still be fine. It's just what I prefer. And if society says she needs to look like this to be successful, or she needs to not have pink hair, or whatever, whatever it is. Everyone says red. How is this red? Can
Well,
you
the
tell
closer
me?
you get to the camera,
It looks more pink,
But
yeah.
when you're back a little bit in the
looks
light,
red.
it looks more
Maybe right up against this red, it's a little more obvious, but you don't know how many haters on the internet are like, that crazy redhead. And I'm like, hey.
Well, you might as well just own it at that
Just be
point.
like,
then.
fine, it's
First
red.
of all, you're wrong. Really. No, I don't. I know that generally those conversations are not
Worth
having.
it.
Nope.
Yeah, and that's okay. It was really interesting to hear you say, Lisa, about the experience of knowing before birth of Skylar's Down syndrome. That took me so many seconds to put in together those words. That was it sounded like I was going to say something very profound, and it was not at all. Is that what you would have not wanted as far as Skylar? Because obviously you did, and obviously she's amazing. Is that what you would have wanted as far as knowing? Like, do you feel like the autism diagnosis and not having that time beforehand to kind of get a grasp on things was like left you more able to just try to go with the flow? Do you know what I mean? Like, was it more anxiety inducing or less anxiety inducing? Did it help you
different diagnoses?
prepare? You know what I mean? To have more time, to know beforehand, some of the maybe different expectations as far as what life could look like, because they're all coulds, right? And that's for any person, period. Right? Whether you find out that they have Down syndrome or not have Down syndrome, we never know what our child's experiences are going to be. So because you have the unique position of having had both, and most people have generally only had one or the other. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, would you mind sharing, like,
for me personally? Well, for us, I know when we got the diagnosis, it was heart-wrenching because again, we didn't have any experience with Down syndrome, and thinking that Down syndrome was kind of like a really bad thing. And so it was, we had to make a decision pretty quickly whether we were going to keep her or not.
And we found out at about 10 weeks, right?
But
Wow.
And so,
because no idea
it could be so early.
When we went through a fertility clinic, so they're constantly
testing your blood and stuff. So they just said
probably different protocols as far as frequency.
Absolutely.
I see.
Yeah. So we could have found out her gender at the same time too. So, or her sex. Sorry, sex. It's her sex at the same time too, because of the blood draw. I mean, now it well, no, not now. Both times, I'm glad we knew ahead of time because it got us prepared. So when we finally decided that we were going to do this, like I just felt like God, source, divine, whatever you want to call it, like did this for a reason. And at this point in our lives, being, I was in early 40s, like I'd done a lot of work. I'm a grown ass woman. I can do this. I'm not 20 and scared and like, oh, what am I going to do? And we have a great community and a lot of support. And I was like, let's do this. So I'm glad, and I think you are too, that we knew ahead of time because we could just like hit the ground running. Yeah. So we immediately started asking everybody we knew, do you know anybody with Down syndrome? Can we meet them? Can we talk to them? Where are the Down syndrome support groups? Who do we talk to? What do we do? We met we
like infiltrated quick.
Yeah. And we met people that way. Like we're just like trying to learn everything we possibly could. So to be prepared, not that we could really be prepared because
of course
we're sure of what, how she was going to be physically and everything. And so I'm glad we knew that. When it came to the autism diagnosis, we kind of knew. Yeah. We were kind of getting signs. And so it was a relief, I have to say. Now, personally, I was also like, geez Christ, she has Down syndrome and autism. Like,
sure.
what kind of contract did her soul make when she came into this world?
Right.
You know, so that was a little bit, I had to grieve that a little bit.
Sure.
But then we just kind of knew. So it was a relief because then we could get the services.
Yes.
And then again, be like, Skylar has Down syndrome. Who do we know who has Down syndrome? Who can we talk to? What do we do? Like, how do we do this? Like, it was just good to know then, like to have that, to be able to get some work done and not just be like, something's different about Skylar and we don't know what to do. And, you know, to get that diagnosis, although diagnosis took forever,
a year and a half
to get, you know how it is to get.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And one of the very first podcast episodes I did was just what to expect emotionally, and then what to expect logistically when you finally do get that diagnosis. And on the logistical side, it was like, whether you're considering a certain therapy or not, get on the list.
Yep.
So when you walk out of that office, you think you have all this time to like peruse and digest. And I'm not saying don't take that emotional time. The time will pass, right? Yep. Your feelings will happen during that time, but
it can take forever.
Have that time on the wait list.
Right.
Okay? Like experience that while you're on the wait list, because it is such a process, and one that people aren't prepared for.
No.
They don't know what they don't know, right?
Yep.
And that was one of my big tips. Like, you can always say no later.
Yeah, you can always cancel the appointment.
Absolutely. And I get that it can clog the system kind of things. And also, unfortunately, you have to learn to be okay with inconveniencing, in quotes, people to advocate for your child and their rights. Yeah. So if you're clogging the system, so be it.
Yeah.
You
it's
know,
not my fault the system's broken.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, if you've seen
maybe clogging, it'll just show.
Maybe it'll show how broken
necessary.
it is.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't think it's going to be solved by me enabling a broken system.
Exactly.
Yeah. The internet like went ham on me this weekend for that video where I thought very appropriately and kindly requested documentation, and I set an expectation for like I'm happy to wait here for a couple of hours to wait for that documentation.
They went crazy on you.
Crazy. And so many of them were educators, which was like,
yeah, the teachers were going crazy on you.
People are just not like, they're not used to asking for what they need.
Right.
Not used to like people, like you're not inconveniencing someone to get something that you need to move forward, survive, like all the things, like how hard is it? Oh, cool. Okay. You need it. Okay. Well, it might take me 2 hours, like just.
Well, and I said, like, I'm happy to wait. And being somebody who is very out of necessity practiced with understanding behavior and learning that behavior is generally not personal, even if they are framing it as very personal at you. So, I mean, what I was getting was just a lot of undersupported people who are really frustrated and probably feel very defeated, and like things are coming at them from all sides that I would imagine maybe feeling like, well, I can't do anything right.
Exactly.
No matter who is, I'm not only failing the kids, but the admin and the parents, and so I can luckily put a lot of that into context and say a lot of that behavior is inappropriate but makes sense, and go for the person with the crazy colored hair because she's must be kooky. You know what I mean? She must be kooky. But also I left a lot of those more extreme comments on there because I wanted parents of kids to know that this is a moderately typical reaction, that a lot of, like you said, that kind of it's not very American social standard to speak directly. We're very passive aggressive, flowery communication. And when you do speak directly, it's either because you are autistic or because it's required. Whatever task is at hand, it's required for you to speak that way. So my other thing in interpreting their behavior is that they must have experienced in life the privilege of not really needing that kind of communication style. And that's not their fault, but also they don't seem very open to understanding that maybe it's a me thing. Like, well, no, maybe it's me and I just don't understand.
Right.
Or I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it can feel like an attack, but it's not.
Right.
It's not an attack.
Right. Well, and I had some of the special educators who were actually in special education versus gen ed teachers who were saying, I have 28 other students. How in the world am I supposed to do that? But all the special education teachers, many of them were like, I know exactly the kind of verbiage you were using and why.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you were trying to get on the record. Yeah, but with that, look at this big, nice transition.
About that too.
Segue. Look at this segue right here. Totally unplanned. How has Skylar's school interactions experience been? And then for you two as her advocate with the school, how has that been for you both? And for her?
In the general sense, we have been incredibly fortunate.
So I'm a little angry about that.
Yeah.
I want her to get the best of everything. I'm really jealous. I'm really jealous.
I know. And we acknowledge it constantly. Like, we realize how privileged we've been so far, because she's cute and she doesn't do anything violent yet. And
hopefully not yet.
I know. I just understand that as she gets older and hormones start happening and things start happening, like there'll be behaviors that aren't as sweet and adorable. Like even her meltdowns are cute.
The kid has really good aim. Let's just say that.
Like she can be like,
yeah.
So yeah, we understand our privilege and we say it all the time. Like if somebody asks, like we also have had the resources to teach us also. Like you came into our lives too, and we're just like, yes, another one, because we met an actual advocate to help us with her first kind of major IEP.
Okay.
We got hooked up with her, and
we learned so much.
She was a scary woman. She
got done.
Yeah. That's like, what I'm saying. Like sometimes the reason that they can get things done is they don't mince their words. And what I try to explain to parents, community members, educators is that we are lawyers for our child.
Yes.
So when we don't have lawyer representation, which we absolutely are entitled to have, we could pay for an advocate or a lawyer to be in those meetings to understand. And so if they had a lawyer saying the same things I am, they'd be like, well,
it definitely did. Like we would ask certain things prior to her, it was kindergarten. So prior to the kindergarten IEP, she had 2 or 3 years of pre-K. 2. Okay. And we're in a great school system already. We chose to keep her in oh God, what's the word? Contained. She's in a self-contained classroom. Okay. We knew that was going to work better for her.
Okay.
And the resources are plentiful for her.
Okay.
We chose to do our best to follow her lead as much as possible. And prior to us having the advocate come in, we would ask for certain things, but we maybe were a little not as direct.
We were naive. We didn't know.
We were a little naive about it. And then, like you said, we didn't realize how much of being our own lawyer how much we had to do. So we had to start reading, start researching, get the advocate, pay for the advocate, which thankfully we could afford to do. So that we could figure out exactly what to do that was best for her. And then during that process, like we were prepared for the time to come when we're going to be met with something that they say no to. And we were prepared for the time that we may have to pull her from a public school system. at some point. Like, we're prepared for that. And at the same time, we've been incredibly fortunate with the teachers that she's had and the people within the school that she's been working with. I think we may have scared them a little bit, or like with the advocate. So like literally anytime we ask for something, they're like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And we're just like, what just happened? You know? So if we can kind of keep that ball rolling, it's okay. But
and with the advocate that we had, our whole intention with her was we want you to teach us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't want to have you all the time. We can't afford to have
Right.
you all the time.
Right.
So not only do we want you to help us with this first kind of major IEP, but also we want to learn. We want to know everything, tell us where to look, show us what to do. And so because we wanted to be able to then kind of take the reins from there and do what we could. And then if we needed help asking someone like you or whatever, like, oh my God, this is a new experience. What do we do? We've not had this happen before. But in the meantime, she was like boot camp for us.
Yeah.
And she taught us everything. To the point that we were just like, please don't come to any more IEP meetings because everybody's nervous and it's not that serious yet. It was just like, but we learned so much from her. So like, that's how we like approach the situation so that we could, as things happen, be like, oh, and then you bought the book that you, Laura, told.
Yay. Is that helpful?
Oh yeah, girl, I showed up with it to the IEP meeting.
She had it's like, Anne-Marie, do you have to bring the book?
Yes.
She's like,
Yes, you do. And you have to like have your glasses like on the rim of your nose, and you have to have like a laptop and like paperwork to be like, all this is my research that I've prepared for this meeting. So like,
and we also like, we can, like you're saying, we can see where the both sides are. Yes, we need exactly what we need for our child. And we also recognize that the system is not where it needs to be. So we're grateful for the time that they are giving us to help work towards that.
right.
And we keep running into people that are willing to show up in that way. I mean, there's of course the outliers right now, but for the most part, we keep running into people that are like, okay, that sounds great. Or, okay, this has worked for us in the past, or, you know, whatever. When it's something that we're butted up to, like, okay, how can this be phrased in her IEP to make sense? You know, and they're willing to take that time, you know?
Exactly. Wow is right. Like, we are so, we're like, okay, that went well.
That was
cool.
You're like trying to like silently communicate with your eyes. You're like, oh, before I go, right? Like, I guess
everything's
okay.
okay.
Over now. Like, you come ready to like,
we do every time.
Yeah, every time. And so far, it's okay.
And we have our eligibility meeting tomorrow because she's turning 7. Yeah, so we have our eligibility meeting. So, Skylar was, speaking of stimming, she was stimming with that last night
with her paperwork.
I probably stim with paperwork. You know, the more that I learn about stimming, the more it's like we all do it.
I catch it all the time.
And, you know, quote, neurotypical ways, whether like my father. So imagine this adorable Japanese man is my father. He has his stim is this exact, like, you play this and compare it to my father's and you will be like, that's the same thing. It goes, it's very distinct. That's the pattern. That's the rhythm.
And he regulates himself. Continue.
That's fine. And part of it's just like your body's a little bored, you know, and when your body sits and holds still for a while, you start noticing those little itches, kind of like when you get a massage and suddenly you're like, if I don't itch this thing on my nose that's never itched before, I'm going to scream. You know, all the, you know, or like, I've never noticed that my right hip kind of does this. It's just something about that stillness that your body tries to find. You know, I've been like moving like this in my chair. You said that you do hair twirling, Lisa. Yeah. I'm a skin picker. I'm sure everyone wants to know.
Right, the inside of my cheek.
Yes, I chew it like a cow. Maybe you don't look like a cow when you do it, but I'm like,
yeah.
I snort. Gross. Yeah, and I don't even know that I do it.
Yeah.
And it's really embarrassing. There's an actual picture of me from my wedding in my wedding dress. I've just come out of the ceremony and it's like this moment where it's like, it's over. Like the ceremony's just happened. And I'm literally like this with the inhale, like mid inhale, with like the downturned mouth where you like get the suction right.
The full like face.
Yeah. And literally there's a picture of it. I'll have to share it with you, Lisa, so that you can share it with Henry. It is just a gem, just a real treasure. But I've learned that culturally that comes from the Asian side of my family, where at least my experience in South Korea and with my own heritage in Japan, I lived in South Korea for 6 years, that snorting is very socially acceptable. It's kind of like how in other cultures burping is meant to, say great taste for whatever meal, and slurping noodles is totally acceptable in China and South Korea, but not Japan. There's those kind of cultural differences. Snorting is totally acceptable. And I grew up with my father snorting all the time. So I don't hear it when it happens. To me, it's like,
It's a scratch.
Scratch. Or like an adjustment of my shirt. It's not something I do consciously. It's like which is so disgusting. I'm sure there are people listening that are literally like, every time I do that and gagging. I apologize, viewers. All 5 of you, I apologize. But I mean, after you guys, it'll be like 6. So here we go. Off we go. But again, I love learning those kinds of stems and then seeing like even how culture influences what's socially okay and not okay, as far as, if you had an autistic child that snorted a lot in a gross way, you might have people being like, that's really gross, don't do that. And yet society and culture, I mean, that's all dependent on where you are. So how important is that really? It's so interesting for me to think about. Really, I'm just trying to justify that I'm kind of a disgusting person with really disgusting habits. So one thing, another thing that I did want to ask you about, because I feel like you both have such a great perspective of following her lead. You've said that several times, which is beautiful and so difficult for me. I feel like I am almost always, as you follow her lead proverbially, I feel like proverbially I am dragging my kids' hands.
Oh, that happens.
Where I'm like, come on, like we are going to food therapy. We are going,
We do
that a lot too.
We do. Well, and she has Down syndrome, so she does not have a hurry up.
There's no hurry up.
No hurry up.
There's no
hurry up.
She just wants to be in that place.
But that goes back to what I was mentioning before, is we chose not to do ABA.
Just because we can totally shout out our therapist because we love her.
But we decided to do PCIT. Have you heard of that?
No, I'd love to know what it means.
Oh my God, more people need to do this.
What is it?
Parent-child interactive therapy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's child-led.
Okay.
So, and that's how we learned all this, and how we had to like unlearn our behavior of like, Skylar, we have to leave in 5 minutes. Like, get your ass together and let's,
right.
Just like Diana, our therapist, would say, why do you have to leave in 5 minutes?
What happens if you're late?
What happens if you're late? I'm like, what? Well, I can't.
Meanwhile, I'm late to everything.
Yeah, but I'm just like,
and Marie's like, see, I've been telling you this for years. What happens if we're late? It's not
just like, but the therapists are waiting for us, and we have to. And she's like, so you're late. What's gonna happen?
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like there's a way to be irresponsible and disrespectful with someone else's time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I feel like there's a way to say, I apologize for our tardiness.
Yeah.
We were waiting on for Skylar. And that's totally okay, versus I'm giving you this excuse for the egregious sin that we have committed. It's just it's less an apology and more of like, I'd say like a beg your pardon. You know what I mean? Like a meaning like, this exists and it's okay, but I appreciate that it probably inconvenienced you for a second.
It also like
You
it
know, and
gave
that's
us,
okay.
yeah, it also gave us the opportunity to take again another big look at our own time management, our own priorities, and what needed to happen to get to the car. And all
Mhm.
like
But also
for
language.
oh well, yeah, that comes
Learning
into it.
learning language too.
So it was getting to understand that all of that like task management, all of those all of those little steps that we take for granted
Right.
were overwhelming Skylar's nervous system
Right.
so much. And so Diana was like, okay, well, what first needs to happen? And then so we started scripting stuff, and we catch ourselves doing it now all the time. Like, okay, today you are going to ride the bus. And that's where the direct language came in. Instead of saying, we are riding the bus, because Lisa and I aren't riding the bus. Skylar's
Right.
riding the bus.
And
So-
I'm sure she'd be like, "Oh, we are?"
Yeah.
And then
How
shocked,
should we
surprised,
understand it?
disappointed, upset when you're not getting on. It's like, well, so now I don't trust
We.
you.
Yes.
Now you, yes, that is so
Direct,
smart.
direct language, very
Direct,
clear.
very clear, very like whittle it down to one or two tasks, and then like continue past that. And then we catch her with her little echolalia, like scripting it to herself. You know, it's so sweet when she doesn't.
That's beautiful too.
So she'll just like script stuff to herself, like first, what I don't know, just an example, first shoes, then bus, you know, whatever it is. And she may not say all those words, but it is that. It'll be like shoes, bus, or something like that. And so we've learned to take, okay, so she's gonna ride the bus today. We know that it takes this long to get ready. So we know that we have to get upstairs by this time. And then
And this, is, and this is the language we need to use. And don't be passive aggressive, and don't use the royal we, and da 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 da. Like, just be very direct. So we had to retrain ourselves, as you know, with people with autism, they're direct.
Yeah, very clear, very direct.
You know,
if you smell, generally they're going to be like, "You smell."
Exactly.
And they don't mean anything other than you smell.
The fact is the fact.
Yep.
Exactly. We're working on right now, like manners, which is very weird when we think about it. But she'll just say,
cheese.
I want cheese.
Like, okay.
Or just say cheese.
Or she'll just say cheese.
And you're like, cheese.
And like, Skylar, cheese. I would like some cheese. Or Mama, I would like some cheese, please.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself,
why? She's saying exactly what she needs.
Like, I know I want to make sure that in society that she doesn't seem like a person that's difficult to be around.
Sure.
And it sounds very, just like learning language is funny. You're someone who does a lot with language. Like, language is really interesting, and just learning how, and you have taken it to work too, like the way you speak to your patients, and just like being so direct. And direct is okay. It doesn't have to be like, can we go do that? Something a lot of the older generation does. Let's put our shoes on.
Skylar's like, nope.
And then I'm looking at her like, you already have your shoes on. You need to say to Skylar, it is time for you to put your shoes on.
Yeah.
Right.
How about we blah, or can you? And she can easily say no.
No. Right.
Phrase the question. Don't phrase it as a question if you don't want the answer.
Well, and then you're implying to that person that there's an option.
Yes,
exactly. So if there's not an option, then don't ask me.
Exactly. But we're trained that way to it's polite.
Right.
It's like, I understand what you're trying to. I understand you're trying to be polite, and we need to rephrase that.
Right. Do you feel like because I know for my husband and I, and I'm sure for any couple that is going through this process, and there's such a learning curve. And by curve, I just mean, I feel like it just keeps curving. Like, you never get to the top of the curve where you're like, got it. It's just like, it continues and continues and continues. There have been times where my husband and I, even currently, have ended up on different pages where we really sincerely, with the best of intentions, think that a different approach is what will be helpful or appropriate. Whether it's, maybe one person's looking more long run and the other person's looking more, the long run will be better because all the short runs are better. You know what I mean? Just differences in I mean, how do y'all navigate? And maybe you don't. Maybe magically every moment has been like, right, right, honey. And then you all like continue and move forward. But how have you experienced that?
I
What does
think
that look like for you?
I love that she's looking at me for this.
Well, because I feel like we've sort of been growing up together, but again, maybe because we got married later in life, had a kid later in life, we've both done a lot of like work on ourselves already.
Yeah.
So I feel like if we had met when we were younger, had Skylar when we were younger, it may have been a little different. Because now, I don't know. I can speak for myself when I say I can feel the friction when we both are having different ideas about how something maybe should go. And then I will just pause and think, what would our therapist Diana do?
We say that all the time. What would Diana do?
What would Diana do?
WWDD.
Or what would Diana say?
What would Diana say? Right now?
I need to know this Diana. Does she have availabilities?
Probably not, but you can try.
Hey, I'm on a wait list for the entire world anyway. Might as well add my name on another wait
I'm
list.
sure she knows people that does.
Yeah, she knows other people.
She would personally recommend, because right now we are doing the therapist that we saw with a certain local hospital was really quiet and timid. And that's okay. That works for a lot of people. That can open people up to talking, perhaps. But the therapist and I seem to be both on the same page that she's not going to be a good fit. And she's the first person that's been outside of OT, speech, and food therapy, been someone who's more on the emotional and processing things and getting his feelings out kind of person. So I was really disappointed when it didn't seem like it was going to be a match, so I would love to have.
We'll give you her information.
That would be fantastic. And that's the only reason I actually invited you guys on the podcast. I appreciate y'all having come in. Just kidding. But I'll tell you, a huge part of, like what you've discussed quite a few times, is diving deep into the community and getting information from people who have been there firsthand from their perspective. I think what a lot of, at least parents that I've observed in the autistic community, go through is that they don't dig deep into the community, and they kind of try to get into the community via therapists, doctors, and the other people that are associated with the community who are interacting with them about the community, versus going to other parents.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed, and where I think sort of my approach may resonate more with people, is that my perspective is the parent. So when, a speech therapist is talking to you about ideas for your child, they're coming from usually not a position of, I'm also the parent of an autistic child.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that their studies, their efforts, their clinics, their things that they have experienced aren't valid or aren't really helpful to have. But a lot of times it's like, I honestly don't have time to do this for 30 minutes every day with my child. Or my child's attention span is maybe 5 minutes long. That's not going to be something, or they don't have the perspective of, this is one of 4 therapists that my son is currently seeing outside of school, outside of, you know what I mean? And so more figuring out how that can work within the whole frame of everything that a parent would consider. So considering, how's our marriage going?
Yeah.
Like, have we had any personal time together? Do we feel like we can be genuine and authentic with each other? How's the school thing, the therapy thing? Like, there's so many different facets into being a parent. It's not just each of these areas that each professional approaches you with. So I love to hear, and I think from, the limited experience I've had with you two, that seems to be a huge part of your, quote unquote success, for where you seem to be very, I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but like in a good place, as far as I feel like we're doing the right things. I feel like we're at a good pace, or is that all fake and y'all are just fake?
Yeah, but I also, like, for you, when I found you, I was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna watch every video I ever see.
Yay!
Because I mean, I put your YouTube videos on while I'm in the kitchen. I'm just like, because but like you're saying, I think it's so important. I think in any community that we help each other, because like you're saying, you can help me because you've already been doing this for what, 11 years, however old is your oldest. So you have a lot more experience and you've done a lot more things, and you may not have always been in the United States during the time, but you still have the experience. And so I would look to someone like you to be like, oh, there's a Facebook page I'm on, the Autism Inclusivity, I think is the Facebook group. And I learned so much from those parents, because like we have sleep issues with Skylar. We did for a really long time, and getting on there and just like hearing like, oh my God, they're doing the same thing we do. So we're not doing it wrong. You know, it's just like what we have to do to be able to get some damn sleep, or you know, like, but you know, because a therapist will say, well, you need to, like when we did sleep, all the sleep study, and we saw the neurologist and everything is like, well, you need to do this and this. I'm like, that's not going to work. That's
right. We're like, well,
no.
food wise, all you need to do is never eat sugar again.
Yeah.
Never have any dry, bready crackers ever again. And I'm like,
he's a boy. He's a teenage boy.
So, well, besides that, let's just say I didn't do any of that. What else would you do? You know?
Right. Because so it's very, I think we are unashamed, and just like we hear somebody, we're just like, oh, your kid has Down syndrome. Oh, they're autistic too. Like, oh, tell me more. Like, or, you know, just like figure that out. Not that everybody's always open to that either. Because as you know, a lot of people are tired, and parents are just like beat down by everything. And so, I mean, we want to be there. I mean, with what little experience that we do have, for other parents, just like you're doing. But yeah, I think we just are.
Yeah, there's something to be said about like I feel like, for going back to the relationship stuff, I feel like we complement each other, because I feel like I try really hard not to only do this, but I have sometimes a lot more of like a dumbed down, not a dumbed down, but like a more like a watered down medical mindset a lot of times. That I'm like, oh, cool, the data, blah, 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 blah. And then Lisa has like the community eye and the, you know, well, I mean, human, hi, you know, and just go with, I mean, it works in that way very well. And then if we're not quite catching, she's much easier just asking. I'm working on that. Like if we're not meeting eye to eye somewhere, she's like, okay, that didn't feel right, or, you know, whatever it is. And then we can talk about it. But yeah, it has to be the both and, in my opinion, you know, understanding, like talking to you, seeing what you're doing. Okay, that might work for us, but it's like we're our own little experiments anyway. You know, like
that's all any of us are doing. My goodness. It's so true.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of couples, I feel like you have to be so outrageously emotionally intelligent to be able to navigate stressful situations in life without taking it out on your safe person, you know? And for most people, that's a partner. So whether, you know, if you don't happen to have children with disabilities, let's say that your spouse comes home from work all day and they were really stressed about a meeting. A lot of times it's this like angsty kind of attitude is really their call to say, hey, I want you to ask me what's wrong. And then the other person's like, I did this all day and I am really upset and this was really hard and I'm looking for relief too. And rather than that direct communication that we've talked about, we do this passive aggressive like invitation for a pity party, you know, like, please, and not that it's wrong to want that, but when you set somebody else up to say, you need to interpret my behavior and meet my need, we're not really aiming for them to be successful. Yeah. It usually just ends up, you know, going at each other, and especially with more stress in a relationship. I have found that being less passive aggressive and direct in
Yeah.
our communication, direct and kind. So not direct as in like, well, I think you're being an ass.
Yeah.
I'm just being direct and honest. So personally, you're being a jerk. But just direct and kind. So whatever is honest and truthful and said with compassion and understanding for that person's emotional state and gratitude for what they contribute and do, that has been essential for us to modify in our relationship because you know, we were married when I was 21 and he was 24. Our kid was 24. I was 20. My kid was 24 when he was born. He came out like a full-grown man. So no, my oldest child, I was 24 when he was born. And we had to unlearn a lot of that passive-aggressive communication because we didn't have time. We don't have the emotional capacity to have sorry, I apologize. We don't have the emotional capacity. In addition to giving our children what they need, we give our kids all the grace, really, that we have in communication. So all the interpretation of, well, they're saying and doing this, it probably means behaviorally, not that they hate us, like they said. Sounds like they're really frustrated and angry. I mean, we're implementing a new rule. There's a learning curve, you know. It's like we don't have time to do that within our relationship. So we need to be like, hey, I don't think you meant it this way. I felt really frustrated by the comment you made earlier. Can we talk about that? And I think that is such a hard thing for any person to unlearn, let alone simultaneously with another person. Because I've seen a lot of relationships where one person does have that evolving thing, and then the other person maybe doesn't for whatever reason. And when it's not both, it still doesn't really work. You know, I think it's really great that it sounds like you were both already quite evolved in yourselves. Evolved sounds so pretentious, but just through a lot of that like willing of who am I and what does this mean and how do I want to be? It's like sounds like you were already really settled in who you were as yourselves and like your communication styles. And not that means there's no disagreements or arguments or heated moments where you're like you said, friction. That's a great word, where you can just feel this, I'm not sure how I'm about to navigate this. But that perspective wise, it sounds like you're at that place where, but through this whole conversation, I see this end goal of being, while genuine and honest and true to my ethics and values in my life, that I want to do that in accompaniment with my partner. So how can I, not just be like, yeah, you're right, because I want to be with my partner, but also true to myself so I can stay out of resentment, because resentment will just like.
And to be honest, though, I think too, we both had practice marriages.
So I love. I just laugh in your face about that. Yeah, that's always appreciated when they just laugh in your face about that. A really vulnerable thing with me. I appreciate that. I will just laugh in your face.
We laugh at it.
You're safe.
But to be truly honest, like we had, I mean, not that that's a good thing, but I think that it was helpful to have done all that before and not have it work. And then now in our relationship, again, when we found out that Skylar had Down syndrome, it was like a clear contract between us, like, let's fucking
we gotta be a team. Let's do this.
We have to do this. Like and not that things aren't stressful. And kind of when you were describing like not having the emotional capacity, like I do feel like that sometimes.
Right.
Yeah. And we both have jobs where we take care of people. And so sometimes that on top of Skylar, and sometimes there's nothing left for the two of us, but I don't know, there's somehow we're able to acknowledge that, like, I got nothing. Just, I'm just going to read.
We're just wrung out for a minute.
Yeah.
Right. But it sounds like you're saying you also understand it's not personal.
Exactly.
When I say I'm at the end, I'm not saying because I'm not attracted to you anymore.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Because I personally hate you, but
I'm tapped out. I'm tapped out. Like I'm done. You know, I need to
Right.
put on a TV show, or you need to read your book. Like I just, you know, we're done. But also I feel like for myself in relationship, that learning how Skylar communicates, and I love your phrase, behavior is communication. That's one of my favorite
I use
things.
it all the time.
Love it now.
Mhm.
So, but to understand, like learning that as Skylar's parent has made me a better partner and a better person. Now, not that I don't have the
literal goosebumps.
emotional.
Can you see? Literal. My hairs are going. Whoa.
The emotional capacity is totally true. However, all the shit we have to do with Skylar, the constant learning and learning and learning, flips me around to pay attention to how I am with my mom or with my friends or with you, or like anybody I interact with. I'm always like, oh, I learned this new thing by teaching this to Skylar, or understanding how to help Skylar communicate that, or whatever. So I feel like just everything I've done with Skylar has made me a better human.
Yeah.
You know, humaning out in the world. Not that I don't get fucking exhausted and I just want to have a glass of wine and, you know, I'm like tired, but now I can say I'm exhausted. I can't. Or, you know, instead of being like, it's fine, I still love, you know, just all the shit we do to try to make other people feel better. But just to be able to be clear and understand it's not personal. Like, because I think that's what our kids do, right? Like they just say shit and they're not personal. Just
Right.
is.
And if you don't learn that as a parent of a kid that needs to or is directly communicating, it's a life of just pain because you take all of that communicate. What is this saying about
we don't
me?
still do it, right? Like,
Right.
sometimes we still do it. I'm sure you do too. Like sometimes I'm just like, why is she, you know, do it? But it's she can't. She's not doing it to hurt me. It's not
right.
It's not what she's doing.
And then, like you said, the goosebump. Like I can more than one goosebumps. I had more than one. Can you imagine if it was just one big one? You're like, what is that? I'm like, this is how experienced good feels. It's just like this extra head. It is so true. So many of the tactics, this makes me sound like an absolute manipulator. So many of the tactics that I have used with my children, I use on my spouse.
Yes. Well, of course.
Yeah. And it's less to be like I'm manipulating you, and more to be like, I have learned that this is what's effective. I have our best interests in mind. I'm not interested in being malicious. I'm not interested in like this, I don't know, tit for tat kind of thing. Like I just like, how can I support you? Can we talk about that? Can we talk about like what your needs are? And I will talk about what my needs are. If I'm doing something that detracts from building you up as a person, I want to know that because overall I want to support you and build you up. And I'm going to reciprocate. So if I feel like there's something you're doing that's, I think and trust that you love me and that you want me and our relationship to be great. So if you're communicating something in a way that like hurts my feelings, as someone who I think thinks and feels that way, I'm going to let you know in a kind and compassionate way. And when we can know that it's like, this isn't about you. This isn't about you. We're talking about me. And then same with the partner, absolutely. But also just people in general, the kind of like grace and compassion that I can without thought, without effort, just like extend to people has just engendered me to be so freely forgiving and no, I shouldn't say forgiving like I've been wronged, but I just have this lack of judgment because I have this feeling that people are doing their best. They're probably doing the best, and then if sometimes I'll be at church and like this parent will be sitting by me and their kid will be like all over me. And I'm like, I literally didn't even notice. The kid's like in my lap. And I'm like, you're sitting by the one person who's going to be like, whoosh, not an issue. My kid at this point, we'd be trying to keep his pants on. So your kid is like, I'm going to be like, yeah, I don't know. And then grace just for not just younger people or those people who have communication styles that are delayed or cognitive abilities that are delayed, but just people, period. Even mean-spirited things, like I was saying about my silly internet interactions this weekend. It just makes me more understanding of people's behavior and just knowing that it's not really about me.
Yeah.
And then really knowing that the only people I care about, who I'm worried about their approval is me. Like what I think of how I'm behaving, and is it within my ethics and values that I'm behaving, and when not, like that's when I feel gross. And that's when I'm like, I need to apologize. That was really gross of me to say that. I'm really sorry. Apart from that, like my kids and my spouse, and even then sometimes with my spouse, I'll be like, I can hear where you're coming from, and that makes a lot of sense to me. I still feel like what I did was, what I said was in a good place. So like, I'm not like ridden with guilt because I know I'm trying my best, but I also hear what you're saying, and I'm really sorry. That sounds really gross and awful. I don't know. It just helps you be okay being you.
Yeah.
And I really do love that about Skylar. I feel like her existence is just, she gives everyone permission to be who they are, how they are.
She is 100% authentic all the time.
All the time.
Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful because it definitely bleeds itself out and allows for everybody else to get a little bit back to that if they've let it go. Speaking in very general terms, but yeah,
yes,
she allows it to happen.
Like you said, I wish we could all have more of letting that go, because it's such, as we talked about, like the whys of some societal things, and sometimes it's not even like society is pressuring us to do something, but just things we even pressure ourselves to do, that we never dare question why until we kind of have to, because we are in situations where the ones we love most are challenging those. And I have never felt more self-accepting and self-loving than I have now. Which is surprising. Which, I mean, it makes sense when I think real deeply about it. But from a surface level, if I didn't think real deeply about it, I would maybe be surprised. I'd maybe be like, oh, I blame myself for things. I'm always, maybe their performance is directly related to how I'm doing as a parent. There's so many things that it could be going the other way. But I feel like the more wholly I accept who they are, where they are, while simultaneously saying, and we can try for more. Let's try this thing. Or what do you think about this? Or I'm so proud of that effort you made. I know that was challenging for you. It's like I have that same self-talk in my head because I so genuinely believe it for them on their behalf.
Yeah.
I can't genuinely believe it for them on their behalf without it becoming my voice as well, and working so hard to have my kids accept who they are, how they are, and advocate for them in the world. It's like simultaneously I have to do that for myself.
Yeah.
If it's genuine, rather than surface level. If it's surface level and only for just niceties, or because I think this is how it should be, then sure, I can say for you, but not for me.
Yep.
But because it's been so genuine and so sincere, it has really just put me in such a not easy but wonderful place where I can experience the world in a very genuine way, meaning like all of the highs and lows and in-betweens, and feeling like I'm okay with me through all that.
Isn't that a beautiful gift that your sons have given you?
Yeah.
Yes. And something I would never have been able to. And I mean, before the birth of my children, I struggled with a ton. And, I don't think there's any amount of therapy that could have unraveled that for me, like my children have. you know, sort of without my consent, but you know, in the most genuine way because it was required. So yeah, I'm so grateful for people like you, such good examples of letting Skylar be who she is and respecting the person she is. And I love the follow her lead thing. I need to do more of that. And not that you don't like push her to, you can do this.
I was gonna say, like, we don't do that. Like, she gets away with everything.
Right.
Yeah,
well, and I think I have a friend who has another really adorable child with Down syndrome. And she'll tell people like, would you let another kid spit? Then don't let him spit, you know?
right.
And she'll be like, look, just because he's freaking adorable doesn't mean that I want you to teach him like, you know, to do this. But she is in the mouth of a sailor. She'll be like, listen, I know he's adorable. He's also a brat. He also needs to have, you know, he also can't say this is this. She is so funny, but she and you both have been just really good examples of good balanced, because it's not a black or white thing, you know. It's not just all pushing or all self-acceptance, or they're not mutually exclusive, that you can push while being wholly self-accepting, which I guess is a better way. But so often our brains are like, well, is it this one or this one? You have to choose. And then my sister, who's a therapist, is like, but do you?
Exactly.
Why you gotta do that to me?
Why do you have to choose?
Dialectal behavioral therapy, DBT. And it's the idea that our brains function in a way that's like, is it this one or this one? Is it yes or no? Is it good or bad? You know, and they don't like the grays. They don't like well, sometimes, it depends on the context. Well, who's saying it? Well, what's the purpose? What's the intention? Maybe you don't understand. And two simultaneously opposite things can be true at the same time. So rather than, and just changing a verbiage rather than saying, you know, I really like her, but oh my gosh, like she drives me crazy when da-da-da-da-da. You can say, I really like her and she drives me crazy when, so just changing that but to and, that the ending thing doesn't detract from the first thing, that they both simultaneously exist, has been for me, especially with myself, but especially for my kids. I can be wholly accepting and loving of everything that they are, while also like, and we're pushing pretty darn hard for him to open himself up to other foods. And we totally accept where he is right now and that we think he's doing his best. You know, and that's been a real hard one for me.
When I learned that one long ago in a lot of my process, it like changed everything to like try to do that. It's
right?
It's both and you can do both at the same time. Like, it's okay to say, I love you and I'm angry with you.
Yes. It's not one or the other.
Oh, it's okay.
I love that. Well, if there was one piece, just kind of to wrap up, of either something you've learned or advice or something that Skylar has taught you, but something that you would love for another parent to either hear, or maybe what you needed to hear, what may that be? And you could answer maybe one on behalf of you or both of you individually, whatever you would prefer.
Well, you're never alone.
Lisa looks on over.
Well, I mean, I like we're never alone.
Never
There's
alone.
always somebody that has experienced something in some way, shape, or form in a similar way. Like we've never been alone in something. There's always someone out there that's had somewhat of even if it's a minute, similar experience that we can pull from, and then make it work for us. But we're never alone.
And especially in the time now of social media, don't be afraid to just ask somebody. Like, send a DM, slide into somebody's DMs or something. Like, but I mean, because the worst they can say is no or not answer you. Like, just ask. I see so many parents on so many of the Facebook groups who are just so desperately worn out, burned out, scared, whatever. And it's like, just
ask someone to, you never know, someone could say no, like, you know, just make those connections, and you're not alone, and you're not special. Like, someone's done this before. Someone's been through this before. Like, you're not special. So, and you are special.
Yes. I think that I hear that from a lot of parents, that they feel like, I thought I was the only one.
Yeah.
I thought I was the only one who the school's called to say, pick up your kid.
Yeah.
You know, and the shame that can come from, oh my gosh, like, oh, this is so embarrassing. Like, they must think that, you know, he's an awful person, or I thought I was the only one who, my kid's physically aggressive, or, you know, he's 5 and he still wears diapers, or, you know, whatever it is. And you're so right. We're not the only one. And I have love, that's been a huge motivator for me to keep going, because I'm obviously rolling in the money. So swimming in the millions from all my free content that I put out there. No, I literally make like $0.99.
Do you make money on your YouTube and stuff? Do you get
YouTube, no. Facebook Reels is the only one that I make money on. And right now, I've made anywhere from, in the very beginning, I'd make up to like $250 a month.
Wow.
I mean, that's something.
If you were monetized on like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, and you were getting about the same from each platform, then sure. Then, you know, but my TikTok's all messed up because I first set it up in Korea. They have to verify you're a Korean citizen. They can't just change your country. So even though I have 33,000 followers on there and my views are, you know, moderate, I can't ever get monetized on that account.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? But also, like, I don't know. I feel stupid saying that. Part of me is like,
you put so much work into that, Laura.
I really do. I try to provide really valuable content versus, here's my cat.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and that's okay. Like, that's not wrong. But I try to have everything be like, oh my gosh, like eye opener for me. That was really helpful. On Instagram, things are growing, which is fine, but I'm not monetized yet. We'll see. But no, oh heavens no. I got my best suit on. I'm wearing a red Old Navy fleece, if you can't see. Always just dressed to the nine. But honestly, I don't know that I would, even if I had the money. Everything goes back into the printing of books and stickers and advocacy. And maybe I can tell you, since this won't be aired until later, I've accepted a new job. I'm going to work at the Ability Center at Virginia Beach.
Cool.
You are?
So adults with various disabilities. It's a nonprofit. You seem familiar with it.
You know about it.
So I've volunteered there 4 or 5 times now, 2 with my book and 3 doing like music time for their adults, which was great. And their program director asked if I would be willing to come on board with them because I just had such a good time. And such like valuable, you know, I'm sure there will be some days where it's like, this feels like work, but otherwise every time I've gone, I've just been like, it's a room of, you know, just so much of the kind of person that we've talked about. So themselves, and who you don't have to have pretenses with, and you're doing things that a lot of time my inner child wants to do, which is dance and be goofy and sing out loud and make silly sounds, and they're willing to do, they don't care, and they'll just do that. You know what I mean? It's been such and to be fair, the hourly wage is not a lot. Again, it's a nonprofit. But compared to what I'm doing now, it's a much steadier schedule. It'll enable me to be home with my family in the evenings, which I think would help food therapy wise with my youngest to actually have sit down at a time all together. And maybe I'd actually put his food on a plate versus being like, I opened the box of goldfish. You may take from the box. And then wondering why when we put anything on a plate, he's like, no.
Right.
Like, come on, Laura. Like, you know, so just a lot of positive things, but I am so excited. And
When do you
this is
start?
more in
When
the
do you
genre of what I'm doing. So at the new year.
Okay.
Cool. Cool.
And I'm going to offer, but we'll see. I'm going to offer helping them with like their social media presence, because if they could have that adding to their funds as far as being a nonprofit goes, like it could directly contribute to more programs or more slots available for, you know, local community members to be able to participate in some of the activities that they do. So I'm going to see if I can. I don't know that I'd call myself a guru by any means, but I've been at least trying for a while to do it that way. So we'll see. I'm really excited.
Yeah,
As exciting.
I love it. Wait, so you're going to be teaching classes like that Skylar can come to?
Oh, I wish. I feel like I've seen younger people there, but it's mostly adults. And it's not on the weekends. So it's only during the weekdays when I would assume Skylar would be in school. I'll be there Monday through Wednesday. They do have Thursday programs, but they're not currently offering programs Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's like an all-day program for adults of various disabilities and needs. So whether it's doing G-tube feedings, some adults require like diaper changes and toileting services. And then some of it, sure, I'll probably do music stuff, physical movement stuff, which is my other big thing that I do. But I feel like the big skill that I'm really excited to have more into play is just like the connection.
Yeah.
Because I feel like while that something can be improved upon, there is something about just like syncing with people naturally that other people may struggle to sync with and feel a little awkward. I don't know what to say. I don't want to offend them. I don't, you know, that I've never had a thing like that. I've just been able to be willing to fail miserably and be okay with that. And I get it. So it's not like I judge people for saying, well, I don't know what to do or say. I don't want to be offensive. It usually comes from a good place. But it's just led to such wonderful interactions between me and those other people. And there's one young gentleman who calls me the bomb.com. And I'm like, oh, the 2000s are back, my friend. And we are, you know. And the first thing I said when I came in the room last time was, and any question you have for me, it's not a silly question, because he asks after every single question he asks, is that a silly question? And so I told him beforehand, and before you say anything, no silly questions. None of your questions are silly. They're all great. You don't need to ask me. But being like seen and understood in that way feels so good. And to be able to hopefully share that with a population that may not often get to feel that way, I'm really excited about. I'm really excited.
Love that for you.
Well, I'm glad you came on this podcast to talk about how great I am and me doing this new job and how that's going to be
pumping you up.
I know. I'll have you back every day. We'll have a podcast interview every morning where we talk about what a great human being I am. Appreciate you.
We'll bring Skylar because she's an amazing cheerleader. So
she's good cheerleader.
Just the best. Just, again, I don't want to get cute aggressive because it just like I just want to, like, I'm making impressions of my nails on my hand because I'm squeezing my fist so tight, just thinking, like, guys, I wish you could see her. If not, you can follow her Instagram account, right?
I thought she might like just appear at the back door, but
I don't think they're home yet.
They're not home yet.
Oh, she is just, I mean, and maybe you don't want her Instagram account to be like full of unknowns. Like, is that something that
it is full of unknowns?
Yeah.
Oh, is it really? Because so do you mind sharing her Instagram handle?
No.
At
I don't know what it is.
I think it's just Skylar Vaughan Meer.
Okay.
Standby.
And I can put in the comments when you send it to me, I can put in the show notes what it is, because y'all, if you want to smile at any point in your day, say you just got trapped in a porta potty and moved by the construction site while you were in it. Just go there and you will be okay. You'll be like, you know what? It's gonna be all right.
Gonna be okay. Yeah.
If you need a
Yeah.
smile, you just, oh, she's so adorable. Well, thank you so much. You have been fantastic. I appreciate you answering all 1004 of my questions. And again, just being like really great examples of parenting and just this, we're gonna keep trying and it's gonna be okay.
Exactly. Just keep doing the thing.
It's hard. You know, it's really hard. And then sometimes I think it's okay to feel like, oh, it's not gonna be okay.
Oh yeah.
And then to have that time in the shower, I found that that's a good place to cry because it's snot and it's tears and anything else. And then you can just like and do like the yeah, you don't even need tissues. It's just
No, and nobody knows how gross you are.
except that I just told everyone. But yes, 100%. Or you could just like have a podcast and be like, and then I just blow my nose in the shower, and I'm
And then you just tell everybody about it.
nah, that's
But again, you're not the only one.
right. I'm just saying for all those that, shout out to all those that blow your nose in the shower. Peer, 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 peer. But now you do. So thank you so much. I so appreciate it. Look
Absolutely.
for Skylar's Instagram handle in the show notes.
Bye.
Bye. We'll see you next time.